So today is the most auspicious occasion of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's appearance day. So we'll discuss him today. We won't be discussing the Srimad Bhagavatam per se. And in celebration of his appearance day, I thought we would sing a song written by him, a very famous song that is sung throughout the world and all the continents practically daily. So, of course, when we sing these songs, sometimes, because we sing it every day, or like we chant Hare Krishna every day, or whatever, sometimes we may not appreciate it. It doesn't have to be like that, but anyways, I thought we'd sing the song, so try to meditate on it. Song that he wrote. So, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Vijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Chari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashto Tarashata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace HG Bhaktivinoda Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashto Tarashata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sikha Ho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shama Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's appearance day Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Agyanatividandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshulan Militam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him. Bukam Karitivachalam Pangam Langai Tegidim Yakripatabaham Vande Shri Gurun Diditadanam Vancha Kapadirubishcha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this is I'll just read this biography of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura, and then we could discuss. Yeah. Is there any way someone could change this so it has the right time? It's broken? Oh, really? Well, we just need to get a new clock then, because these are signs of insanity, you know, when you have stuff like this around. No, that's okay. No, I mean it's not so much. I mean, it's nice to have a clock here so you could tell, but especially when it's just off and it's not fixed and it won't get fixed. And anyways, it's just. All right. So this is Sri Shachinandana Bhaktivinoda Thakura appeared in 1838 in a wealthy family in the Nadia district, West Bengal. All right. My mind feels more peaceful. He revealed that he is an eternal associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by his extraordinary preaching activities and prolific writing. Living as a Mahabhagavat, topmost Vaishnav, he stayed in the Grihastha ashram until the last few years of his life. Then he renounced everything, accepted Babaji, and entered Samadhi, totally absorbed in the loving service of Gaura Gadadhar and Radha Madhava. He had a responsible government position as a district magistrate, maintained a Krishna-conscious family, and wrote almost 100 books on Krishna consciousness. At the same time, he served the Supreme Lord in so many ways. That is the beauty of his life. After a full day of government service, he would sleep 4 hours, get up at midnight, and write until morning. That was his daily program. There's a quote from Srila Prabhupada. Thakur Bhaktivinoda took Vaishnav Diksha from Sri Vipin Vihari Goswami in the line of Sri Janavamata. Afterwards, he received spiritual inspiration and direction from Srila Jagannath Das Babaji. Holding an exalted government post, vast erudition and spiritual accomplishment never disturbed Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He remained prideless, always humble, friendly to all. Charity seekers at his home always left happy and satisfied. A well-wisher to everyone, he never kept grudges, even with opponents to his preaching. In fact, he never spoke a word that would hurt another's feelings. So, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who is the father of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, there's a picture of him of them on the altar, and you see Bhaktivinoda Thakur has a garland there on a throne. So he, as it was stated here, is an amazing, most powerful acharya in the Gaudiya Vaishnava line, and he plays a very very important role for all of us, and practically, historically speaking, and as we know it, practically, yeah, we wouldn't be sitting here chanting Hare Krishna and hearing the messages of Krishna and doing what we're doing if it weren't for Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. We'd be doing something else, like the ordinary people are doing, right? So in other words, it's by his vision, by his desire that that we're here actually. He appeared in 1838, as I said, in West Bengal. Many people appeared in 1838 in West Bengal, just like many people are appearing today, or you could say taking birth today. But the difference between all the people who appeared in 1838 in West Bengal and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura is a vast difference. Because again, at the particular time, historically speaking, the movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was practically lost. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared 500 years ago, roughly, right? A little more, 500 years ago. And he started the Sankirtan movement, chanting and dancing, taking prasadam, right? Spreading love of Godhead throughout the continent of India, Bharatvarsha. And over time, he had the followers, 6 Goswamis, and so many powerful followers. But over time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement just became hijacked, practically speaking. Of course, there was still authentic devotees around, but they weren't in an organized fashion, and they weren't, you could say, powerfully preaching the message of Krishna consciousness and preserving it. So it was in the hands of all of these impure people. And there's 13 groups, Srila Prabhupada explains in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And also in Bhaktivedanta Swami's book, this very beautiful book, Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhava. It's this 3-volume book of Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, his teachings and life and so on. Maharaj, he describes these different groups. You have the owls and the bows and the Saki Bakis and the Gauranga Nagaris and Chuda Daris and all these different groups. And they all have their specific special, or you could say not so special, flavor of deviation. They're doing different things, philosophical deviations in their practices, and like the Saki Bakis, Saki means like the maidservants, right? Krishna. Right? So these Saki Bakis are men, but they dressed as women, in saris and so on, which is not recommended by our acharyas. Anyways, it's a type of deviation. When we were in, myself, Tirtha Maharaj, and a few brahmacharis and myself, we visited Varshana in India, Vrindavan. And we were there, and we were trying to, purify ourselves and whatever, going around Varshana and taking darshan of the deities and so on there. And we're walking, and then we saw this man. I mean, he was man, clearly, but he was dressed as a, woman, as gopi. So they have these ideas, different ideas. So anyways, we won't get into all the details of the deviation, but so many different things they do that are against Shastra. So these groups, you could say, had a stronghold on Vaishnavism. And when people thought of Vaishnavism, these low-class people, and they do all these abominable things, immoral things, right? So, and interesting enough is that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura, he couldn't find a copy of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, the biography of Lord Chaitanya. I mean, if you just think about that for a minute, he was in West Bengal. He appeared in West Bengal, the place where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, right, where the Gaudiya Vaishnavism was born, you could say, or manifested. But he couldn't find a copy of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. That that just goes to show how lost it was, actually. So through his, it says here, through his preaching, extraordinary preaching activities, and prolific writing, every night, right, he would, says Srila Prabhupada mentions, after full day of government service, he would sleep 4 hours, and then get up at midnight and write till morning. So Srila Prabhupada had a similar program. So he was writing a lot, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura. He was writing many beautiful songs that we have, books. He wrote so many books. And his idea was to base his books basing his books on the Srimad Bhagavatam, on the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and other Vedic literatures. He would write them so that the people of the day could understand them, and he could reestablish Gaudiya Vaishnavism or Vaishnavism in that particular time. You could say resurrect it. So that was his mission, and he did that. He was doing that. And interesting enough is that although he was completely against these different groups, right? Sahajiya groups. Sahajiya means, taking it cheaply. He was against all these different groups, but he would actually write his writings, some of them anyways. They would be written in such a way, of course, staying loyal. He would stay loyal to the philosophy, obviously, but he would write in such a way as it would attract, he wanted to attract these Sahajiya groups to the real message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it said he stayed in the Grihastha ashram with his wife, Bhagavati Devi, and I believe he had 10 children. One of them was Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur. And then at the end of his life, he accepted Babaji, which means he was just fully engaged in chanting and hearing about Krishna, his pastimes. So, and he took initiation from Vipina Vihari Goswami. But most of his inspiration came from his association with Srila Jagannath Das Babaji, who's on the altar there to the left of him, and Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji. Which is amazing because Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, from external point of view, he was a magistrate. He was a wife and 10 children and magistrate, and but Gaurkishore Das Babaji, who is Sakshat Vairagya Murtiye, the personification of renunciation, and Jagannath Das Babaji, these who are the two most famous, authentic, pure devotee Mahabhagavats of the time, topmost devotees of the time, they would come regularly to his house in Mayapur, and they would associate with each other and discuss the Bhagavatam and so on, Chaitanya Charitamrita. So yeah, he got his inspiration from them, Jagannath Das Babaji, Gaurkishore Das Babaji, and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He trained his son, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, very carefully, very extremely carefully from the very beginning of his, by the time he appeared into his youth. He trained him. He would engage Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in editing his books. He would engage him. He gave him his japa beads that I heard from a devotee recently. I think it was Rajanjananda Prabhu made the point that the beads that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur gave Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur were the beads that Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself chanted on, 1 billion names. Because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in his later life, I think it was in his early 30s, he chanted 1 billion names, which took about 10 years. practically. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakura did a similar vrat, and he gave those beads to Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura. So he was training him very carefully and engaged in him in spreading Krishna consciousness. And from that careful training and guidance of Bhaktivinoda Thakura and inspiration, Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura started the powerful mission of the Gaudiya Math, which 64 temples throughout India. They had some places in Burma as well. They had a place in Burma. They had a center in London. But they started this powerful movement, and it was extremely powerful at the time. It was really a powerful force changing India. And of course, we won't get into all the details, but due to some desire for power, some desire for position, and so on, after Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura left, practically the mission he started crumbled. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada coming to America, which, interesting enough, I mean, when he was in America, he sent back letters to his godbrothers, and he was saying that we could start this movement in New York and in America and throughout the world, and it could be under, the name of the Gaudiya Math, and, we could get together and try to spread the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, serving our Guru Maharaj. It's amazing. Prabhupada was trying for years, like literally years, like decades, to try to cooperate with his godbrothers and preach together. And then even when Srila Prabhupada came, he was still doing that. But then eventually Prabhupada said, okay, fine. And he just, and the International Society for Krishna Consciousness was started. So from Bhaktivinoda Thakura's desire and his vision came Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura, who had the same desire and vision. And from that desire and vision of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura, that was Srila Prabhupada also had the same vision and desire. And here we are today. And the Krishna conscious movement is all over the world due to these personalities. So here also it's mentioning his different qualities. He was prideless and friendly to all. Charity seekers at his home always left happy and satisfied. So he was, as a grihasta, giving charity to those who needed it. He never kept grudges. So on. So, all right, so we'll continue reading. The Thakura was always courageous and acted for everyone's welfare. Keeping personal needs to a minimum, he led the simplest of lives. In the following entry from Saranagati, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura, who had all pure divine qualities, takes the role of a conditioned soul to teach us how to advance in Krishna consciousness. So this is what he says. You should always absorb your mind in attentively chanting Krishna's glories. By performing Krishna Kirtan, you'll gain mastery over the mind. Give up all false pride. Always think yourself to be worthless, destitute, lower, and more humble than straw in the street. Practice forgiveness like the tree. Giving up all violence toward other living beings, you should maintain them. Throughout your life, you should never give anxiety to others, but do good to them, make them happy, and forget about your own happiness. Thus, when you become a pious good soul by possessing all good qualities, you should give up desires for fame and honor, and just make your heart humble. Knowing that Lord Sri Krishna lives within all living beings, you should respect and honor everyone at all times. You will attain virtue by being humble, merciful, respecting others, and renouncing desires for fame and honor. In such a state, you should sing the glories of the Supreme Lord. Weeping, Bhaktivinoda submits his prayer at the lotus feet of the Lord. O Lord, when will you give me such qualities as these? So he's teaching us how to what is valuable and what is not valuable. And specifically, he's teaching us what we should strive for. And it's not a passive thing. We wake up one morning and it's easy to be Krishna conscious, right? We're just automatically Krishna conscious. The Krishna conscious is natural, but because we've conditioned ourselves, right, in material existence, it seems unnatural. But in order to get back to the natural state, it requires a lot of hard work. It's not that we just wake up one day and, all right, I'm fully Krishna conscious. Just like when someone wants to enter an Olympic race, running, right? It's not that they just wake up, not that just some guy wakes up and, all right, now I'm ready to run the Olympic race and get my gold medal. And then he runs off to the race and, all right, I'm here, and then sign me up. And then he runs in the race, and then he gets his gold medal. It doesn't happen like that. They don't even let him in. They won't let him in unless he's trained very carefully. And not only just trained carefully, but he actually has to have that training had an impact on him in which he was able to participate in the race or the Olympics. So similarly, we can't just expect just to wake up and Krishna conscious is easy, right? Like really easy, like naturally, like our mind is completely fixed on Krishna. But we have to train, just like these guys in the Olympics. They train every day. They're not just like, all right, well, today I don't feel like it. I'm not training today. Every single day, they're training carefully, right? Everything they do, actually, in their life is helping them move towards the goal of entering the Olympics and able to participate. So he's explaining to us what we should be striving for. And when I say it's not automatic, it means he's praying. That's part of it, too. It's not that we're just by the sweat of our brow we will advance in Krishna consciousness, but he's praying. We have to pray. And he's saying, "Oh Lord, when will you give me such qualities as these?" Right? So then his daily schedule, it says he would rest for 2 hours and then write for 6 hours, rest another 30 minutes, chant japa for 2.5 hours, and correspondence for 30 minutes, study shastras for 2 hours. Then he would bathe and take a little prasadam and then go to his work for about 4 hours, go home, refresh from 1 to 2, 2 to 5, court duties, 5 to 7, translate shastras to Bengali, 7 to 8, bathe, have some prasadam, and then, so the summary of the schedule is sleeping. This was from, sleeping was 3 hours, write 8.5 hours, that's a lot of writing. Japa study 4.5 hours and work for 6 hours. So he was busy, yes. Srila Srinivasacharya praises the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. The 6 Goswamis deeply studied all the shastras in order to establish eternal religious principles for the benefit of everyone. Similarly, Thakur Bhaktivinoda made unlimited preaching contributions to help humanity, and for this he is known as the 7th Goswami. So 3 major accomplishments or preaching achievements. He wrote 100 authorized spiritual books, discovered appearance place of Lord Chaitanya, introduced preaching innovations. Besides books, he wrote hundreds of poems and songs full of spiritual sentiments and shastric siddhanta conclusions. His writings have made the sacred teachings of Mahaprabhu fully available to every modern reader, and they are presented in a form which carries irresistible conviction and devotion. And then it says that he made some predictions. So these are the predictions he made. He said, "A personality will soon appear," wrote Bhaktivinoda Thakura, "and he will travel all over the world to spread the teachings of Lord Chaitanya." So who's that? Yeah, Srila Prabhupada. So Bhaktivinoda Thakura, he predicted Srila Prabhupada. He said that as soon a personality will appear and he'll spread the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu all over the world. The second prediction is, very soon the chanting of Hare Krishna will be spread all over the world. And then him desiring, oh, when will that day come when people from America, okay, we got people from America here, England, nobody from England, but it's going on over there, France, Germany, Russia, will take up kartals and mridanga and chant Hare Krishna in their own town, in their towns. So he's saying that it will happen, and then he was eager, right, to see, oh, when will that day happen? So the third prediction, when will that day come when the fair-skinned foreigners will come to Sri Mayapur Dham and join with the Bengali Vaishnavas to chant Jai Shachinandana, Jai Shachinandana? When will that day be? So the concluding of this biography, Srila Prabhupada said that it's spiritually significant that he himself appeared in 1896, the same year Bhaktivinoda Thakura sent his book overseas. So that book was Lord Chaitanya, his life and precepts. It was a book that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura wrote about Lord Chaitanya, and he sent it to Canada, to McGill University. And Guru Das, Srila Prabhupada's disciple, he found that book actually one day, and he brought it, and I think he brought it to Srila Prabhupada, and yeah, it was understood that it was sent 1896, the year of Srila Prabhupada's birth. So quite amazing. The will of Lord Chaitanya, the desire of Thakur Bhaktivinoda, and the mercy of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur empowered Srila Prabhupada to spread Lord Chaitanya's teachings and chanting of the Hare Krishna all over the world. Prabhupada fulfilled Thakur's three predictions. Devoid of pride, full of humility, radiant with pure love for Radha Krishna, Srila Prabhupada gave all credit to the previous acharyas. Then Srila Prabhupada said, we should take it that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura was the origin of the Krishna consciousness movement in its pure form. In 1986, just 100 years after Bhaktivinoda Thakura's third prediction, 3,000 fair-skinned devotees from America, England, France, Germany, Russia, and 50 other countries gathered at the ISKCON Mayapur Chandradoya Mandir in Sridham Mayapur. They joined 1,000 Bengali Vaishnavas in chanting Jai Shachinandana, Jai Shachinandana, Jai Shachinandana Gauda Hari. And it's increasing. We have more and more devotees, right, going to Mayapur. I don't know how much the new temple will hold, the TOVP. 10,000, okay. We have, quite a number of devotees going over there especially during Gaur Purnim time, for the Navadvip Mandala Parikrama, the festival, Gaur Purnim festival. In the Parikrama, the groups, the devotees going around Mayapur, there's different groups. You have a big Russian group. I don't know how many devotees there. Anyways, you have different groups, like the Hindi-speaking group, Russian-speaking group, English-speaking group, Bengali-speaking group. It's quite a number of devotees. So it's increasing. In 1914, the Tirabhavatiti disappearance day of Srila Gadadhar Pandit, Thakur Bhaktivinoda entered the eternal pastimes of Krishna. In Godruma Dweep, Navadvip, Shri Shri Gaur Gadadhar, the worshipful deities of Thakur Bhaktivinoda, await to bless any visitors to Swananda Sukhada Kunj. So when devotees go to Mayapur, for those of you who have already went, great. And for those of you who haven't, then when you do go, across the Jalangi, this river, there's the house of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura. And anyways, it's a very beautiful house in which he lives. So that's a place of pilgrimage there. Of course, he also had a place in Jagannath Puri. He also had a little house, Radhakund. So he had a few places, these holy places he would visit in these holy places and live. So anyways, it's auspicious day, and we could pray. We should pray to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura to bless us and to help us and to be Krishna conscious, to spread Krishna consciousness, and yeah, we should be happy and grateful that we're connected with such great personalities, and that we don't have to be connected with fools and rascals, thinking blechas and all types of different people who are just not worth really being connected to. So we should be very happy and grateful that we're actually connected with personalities who are divine personalities. So okay, does anybody have any? Yes, you have a mic for Bhajanar and so on.
You were talking about his Kopa Samadhi, how he left, and Prabhupada described that it came to the point that he was just sitting and meditating on the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. And in the evening, he had one assistant who would come and wrap a chadar around him. And in the daytime, when it warmed up, he'd take the chadar off. And he just didn't move, Kopa Samadhi. And ultimately, he just stopped breathing. They just realized he's left his body, but he just was fixed in trance. So even though we have this example, there was a Mr. Ravenshaw who was the British, they called it whatever, I forget the name of him, but he was the one who oversaw Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura, and he, for the British government. There was a parallel, like you have the governor, and then you had the local Indian governor, and then you had the British officer. They were parallel, but he was the Indian citizen was under the British during the British Raj, and that Mr. Ravenshaw tried to get Srila Bhaktivinoda. He criticized him and tried to get him reduced. Bhaktivinoda Thakura had the highest position in the British Raj, the British government of India, that an Indian citizen could have. He'd risen to the highest level. And this Mr. Ravenshaw tried to cause difficulties to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura. Later on, he came and apologized. He thought, typical, that because Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura would come and he would finish up, he'd only be there for like 4 hours, and the rest of the judges would be there for 6 hours. I don't know what the exact number was, but much longer. And he thought, oh, typical, he's going home and sleeping, or what's he doing? And Mr. Ravenshaw had him trailed and found out. But then he said, let me show his work. And he found that the work of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura was doing more than any of the other judges of a much higher caliber. So he couldn't find fault there. And then he found out what was he doing? He's going home and writing religious literature. And he was Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura was so well respected, Mr. Ravenshaw was afraid as the British officer. He told, later on when he apologized to Bhaktivinoda Thakura, he told him that, I thought if there were 5 more of you, you could throw us all out of India. He was so influential. So it just gives you a flavor of his status. You were describing how Srila Gorkashore Das Babaji, Jagannath Das Babaji, but Prabhupada said that at that place, across the Jalangi at his house, that you had Srila Gorkashore Das Babaji, Jagannath Das Babaji, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura would all gather. And Prabhupada said the atmosphere became so sublime that trees that only grow in Vrindavan. Vrindavan is, quite dry, and it's a more arid climate, and Bengal is lush jungle. So trees that would only grow in Vrindavan began to sprout there. And just one last thing, just as a sidelight, knowing how advanced he was, but Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was his agent and assistant and so many things, but sometimes they would argue a little bit, like father and son, they argue sometimes. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would call him, "Oh, you're just a fallen householder." So they would joke back and forth like that, although he was so elevated. And just one last thing. He would look he is the one who discovered the birth site of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because, there was, just like you have, the house of George Washington, or, Lincoln slept here, and they got a little curio shop and a restaurant and a guest, and they make money off it. So there was a bunch of places that were claiming to be the birth site of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur just wasn't feeling it. So, and it's a whole story. He was trying to get transferred so he could be in Navadvip, so he could be in, in Mayapur, for just to be in the Dham, and also to just, search out where was the birth site. And they wouldn't let him go. The British government kept transferring him here, transferring him there, because he was so good. And finally he told them, if you don't transfer me to Navadvip, I'm going to quit. I'm going to retire from government service. So then they agreed and put him in charge of the district of Nadia. And he used to go with old British maps, because, the Ganga, it shifts, over 500 years or 400 years at that time. It shifts so many times. The actual birth site had been lost. So he had old British maps, and he used to travel, he had a servant with an umbrella and somebody else carrying the maps, and he would search all over the place to no success. And then one day, you were reading his schedule, how he's, we would say early in the morning, they would say in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever. He was on the veranda of that house. And if you look, if you cite, anyway, I'll just say, he was standing there, he was chanting on the veranda, and a beautiful light appeared in the sky, low in the sky, in the middle of the night, because he was praying, where is it? Help me, you've got to reveal it. How will we find it? I've tried everything. And this light appeared. And he marked it. He marked where the light was, and he went the next morning. As soon as there was daylight, he crossed the Jalangi and went there. And right where that light, that in the sky, that luminescence, he looked, as it's described in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, there were the 7 hills, where the 7 rishis took place. There was tulsi growing wild. The Muslims, they wouldn't do anything there. They said they thought the place was haunted by ghosts. It was actually the devas coming and offering respects. So just to confirm it, he went and got Jagannath Das Babaji, who at that time was, I think they say 108 or 115. He'd lost count. By the time you get to that, it really doesn't make much difference. And they carried him in a basket, because he was so old he couldn't walk. So they brought him in a basket. And when they brought him in the basket to the birthplace that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura had discovered, he jumped out of the basket and began dancing. This is it. This is it. So he was a discoverer, and he went door to door in Calcutta and collected the money to build. They've got that replica of the birth house of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so that's Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura. So a few things about him.
Thank you.
I don't want to trouble you. I can sure help you.
Hare Krishna. If no one has anything else to add, if it's okay, Maharaj, there's this wonderful English poem that Bhaktivinoda Thakura wrote. And if I could just read it, it'd take about 5 minutes. Do we have time?
Yeah.
Okay.
He also kept a gold pocket watch. We were reading his schedule,
Mm.
and Prabhupada said he was always an hour early for any train. He was not Indian Standard Time. He was on the ball, you know, and he kept a gold pocket watch, and kept track of, you know, one of the signs of a devotee is they don't waste time. So he was very efficient in how he used time, and he always came to court with nice tilak.
So this is called O Vaishnav Soul, Saragrahi Vaishnav. Saragrahi means one who is always going for the essence of Krishna consciousness. Alas, for those who spend their days in festive mirth and joy, the dazzling, deadly liquid forms their hearts for air employ. The shining bottles charm their eyes and draw their heart's embrace. The slaves of wine can never rise from what we call disgrace. Was man intended to be a brute in work and heart? Should man, the lord of all around, from common sense depart? Man's glory is in common sense, dictating us the grace that man is made to live and love the beauteous heaven's embrace. The flesh is not our own, alas, the mortal frame a chain. The soul confined for former wrongs should try to rise again. Why then this childish play in that which cannot be our own, which falls within 100 years as if a rose are blown? Our life is but a rosy hue to go ere long for naught. The soul alone would last for e'er, with good or evil fraught. How deep the thought of times to be, how grave the aspect looks, and wrapped in awe become, O we, when reading nature's books. Man's life to him a problem dark, a screen both left and right. No soul hath come to tell us what exists beyond our sight. But then a voice, how deep and soft, within ourselves is felt. Man, man, thou art immortal soul, thee death can never melt. For thee thy sire on high has kept a store of bliss above. To end of time thou art, O his, who once but purest love. O love, thy power and spell benign, now melt my soul to God. How can my earthly words describe that feeling soft and broad? Enjoyment, sorrow, what but lots to which the flesh is heir? The soul that sleeps alone concludes in him it hath a share. And then, my friends, no more enjoy, no weep for all below. The women, wine, and flesh of beasts no love on thee bestow. But thine to love thy brother man, and give thyself to God. And God doth know your wages fair. This fact is true and broad. Forget the past that sleeps, and ne'er the future dream at all, but act in times that are with thee, and progress thee shall call. But tell me not in reasoning cold, the soul is made alone by earth's mechanic lifeless rules, and to destruction prone. My God, who gave us life and all, alone the soul can kill, or give it all the joys above, his promise to fulfill. So push thy onward march, O soul, against an evil deed, that stands with soldiers' hate and lust, a hero be indeed. Maintain thy post in spirit world as firmly as you can. Let never matter push thee down. O stand heroic man. O Saragrahi Vaishnav soul, thou art an angel fair. Lead me on to Vrindavan, and spirit's power declare. There rest my soul for matter free upon my lover's arms. Eternal peace and spirit's love are all my chanting charms. Hare Krishna. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura.
All right, does anybody have any last comment or question? Yeah, thank you. Okay, Daniel.
Thank you, Balaram Prabhu. It's just a quick question. Do we know the exact year, date, and month that Lord Chaitanya appeared?
Yeah.
What is it?
The date shifts because we've got the Vaishnava calendar is lunar, whereas the other ours is Gregorian calendar is solar. But it's in February. It's the full moon of February. Full moon.
Jai. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura ki jai.